An elderly woman with dirty clothes was thrown out of a jewelry store due to her appearance. When they called the owner of the jewelry store, everyone was shocked when the elderly woman's phone started ringing. The afternoon sun bathed the busy street, casting dancing shadows on the hot asphalt. Charlotte, a 70-year-old lady with graying hair and piercing blue eyes, walked slowly, leaning on her polished wooden cane. Her once elegant floral dress now showed signs of time, just as the wrinkles on her face told stories of a long, experience-filled life. As she watched the frantic movement of the city, Charlotte couldn't help but think, how the world has changed. Sometimes I wonder if there's still a place for someone like me in all this rush. The murmur of the crowd was interrupted by a shrill, desperate cry. Charlotte turned, her eyes searching for the source of the sound. That's when she spotted a little girl, no more than 5 years old, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, tears streaming down her chubby cheeks. Without hesitation, Charlotte approached, ignoring the pain in her knees. She bent down with difficulty, getting to the child's level. "Hello, dear, is everything okay? Where are your parents? Did something happen?" Charlotte asked, her voice soft and comforting. The girl, between sobs, replied, I don't know where my mommy is. We were in the toy store and now I can't find her." Charlotte felt her heart tighten. Memories of her own daughter when she was a child flooded her mind. Determined, she took the girl's hand. "Don't worry, we'll find her together." "What's your name, dear?" Charlotte asked, trying to calm the girl. "Sophie," the little one replied, still with tears in her eyes. Together, Charlotte and Sophie began to walk along the street, looking in every store, and asking passers-by if they had seen the girl's mother. Time passed, and Charlotte felt the weariness weigh on her shoulders, but the determination in her eyes did not diminish. "You know, Sophie, when I was young, I got lost once too. But there are always kind people willing to help. We must never lose hope," said Charlotte as they walked. After what seemed like an eternity, a cry of relief cut through the air. "Sophie, Sophie!" A woman came running towards them. Sophie's eyes lit up, and she let go of Charlotte's hand, running into her mother's arms. Charlotte watched the scene with a mixture of joy and relief to see the girl was found. Sophie's mother turned to Charlotte, gratitude overflowing in her words. "Thank you so much for looking after her. I don't know how to thank you. I was desperate looking for her. One second she was by my side in the store, the next she was gone." Charlotte smiled, feeling a wave of emotion envelop her. "There's no need to thank me. Seeing families reunited is the greatest reward I can have." As she spoke, Sophie ran back to Charlotte, hugging her legs tightly. The unexpected impact made Charlotte lose her balance. She tried to steady herself, but her cane slipped on the wet sidewalk. In an instant, Charlotte found herself falling towards a large puddle of dirty water at the edge of the street. The world spun around her, and Charlotte closed her eyes, bracing for impact. Splash! Cold, dirty water soaked her dress, completely staining it. She felt the fabric tear in some places as she tried to get up. People around approached, offering help, but Charlotte was more worried about Sophie. "Are you okay, dear?" she asked, ignoring her own discomfort. Sophie, eyes wide, nodded, still in shock at what had happened. As Sophie's parents helped Charlotte up, she felt something strange, a sense of emptiness, as if something important was missing, but she dismissed the thought. Then Charlotte said goodbye to Sophie and her mother, giving them a smile despite the discomfort of her wet clothes. As she walked towards the nearby park, the feeling that something was wrong grew. Her fingers instinctively sought the familiar outline of her wedding ring, normally hanging on a chain around her neck. Panic washed over her when she realized it wasn't there. It was an object of inestimable value, not for its monetary worth, but for being an item of memories from her late husband. "Oh no, 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 George, my love, forgive me. I can't have lost the only memory you left me," she murmured, her voice trembling. With a racing heart, Charlotte began retracing her steps, her eyes frantically scanning the ground. The ring was more than a mere object. It was her anchor, her connection to a past that sometimes seemed so distant. Tears began to form in her eyes as she scoured every inch of the path. "Where are you? Please show up," she whispered desperately, desperate to find the lost ring. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the park. Charlotte ignored the weariness in her legs, the pain in her knees, focusing only on her desperate search. People passed by her, some casting curious glances, others completely oblivious to her despair. In her mind, memories of George flooded her thoughts, his gentle smile, the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his embrace. I can't lose this too. It's all I have left of him, she thought. The hours dragged on, and darkness began to swallow the park. Charlotte felt the weight of failure pressing on her shoulders. Exhausted, she sat on a nearby bench, finally allowing the tears to fall. George, I'm sorry, I failed you again. How could I have been so distracted and careless? She sobbed softly. The park, once full of life, now seemed empty and cold, echoing the loneliness that threatened to consume her. While she was sitting there, lost in her despair, Charlotte didn't notice the approaching figure. A young man, perhaps in his late 20s, stopped in front of her. His eyes shone with a mixture of curiosity and something else, something Charlotte couldn't immediately identify. Are you all right, ma'am? You seem to have lost something important, he asked, his voice soft, almost melodious. Charlotte looked up, surprised by the sudden company. For a moment, hope blossomed in her chest. Yes, I lost my wedding ring. It's all I have left of my husband, she replied, wiping away her tears. The young man nodded understandingly, a smile forming on his lips. How sad. I think I can help you find it. Is it a valuable object? How much is this ring worth? He asked, his eyes shining intensely. Charlotte, in her innocence, noticed nothing suspicious in the young man's question. Oh, my young man, its value cannot be measured in money. It's the memory of my George that makes it precious, she replied with a sad smile. The boy seemed to ponder for a moment before speaking again. How can I help you find it, ma'am? I have young eyes and agile legs. I can search in places that you might not be able to reach. The offer of help touched Charlotte's heart. She saw in the young man the kindness she still believed existed in the world. You are very kind, my boy. It would be wonderful to have help. These old eyes are not what they used to be, she said with a grateful smile. The young man extended his hand to help her up from the bench. Let's go then. The sooner we start, the better the chances of finding your ring. Charlotte accepted the help, feeling comforted by the young man's presence. You know, you remind me of my grandson. Always ready to help others, she commented as they began walking through the park. The boy smiled, but his eyes remained cold, something Charlotte, in her trust, did not notice. Ma'am, you shouldn't be alone in the park at this hour. It's dangerous, you know. But don't worry, I'll protect you while we search, he said, his voice blending false concern with a veiled threat that went unnoticed by Charlotte. Charlotte and the young man walked through the park, now almost completely dark. The shadows of the trees danced under the dim light of the posts, creating an increasingly unsettling environment. The boy was leading Charlotte to a more isolated area, claiming that the ring might have fallen somewhere off the main path. I know, ma'am, sometimes the most precious things hide in the most unlikely places, he said, his voice soft but with a strange tone. Charlotte, still confident, only nodded, her eyes scanning the ground in search of a metallic glint. You're right, my young man. George always said that life surprises us when we least expect it, she replied, her voice laden with nostalgia. As they moved further and further away from the lit areas, Charlotte began to feel a slight apprehension. The park she knew so well seemed different, almost frightening in the darkness. The young man led her to an alley between two abandoned buildings lining the park. Maybe it rolled in here. Sometimes small objects like rings can slip into unexpected places. I've searched alleys like this before and found incredible things, he suggested, his tone now more urgent. Charlotte hesitated for a moment. Are you sure? It seems so. Dark and dangerous. I don't know if we should risk it. What if we trip or get hurt? She mumbled, more to herself than to him. The boy smiled, but the gesture didn't reach his eyes. Trust me, ma'am. I'm here to help. I have a flashlight on my phone and know this area well. I promise I won't let anything happen to you. The moment they entered the alley, the atmosphere changed drastically. The distant sound of traffic was muffled by the tall, dirty walls. Charlotte felt a chill run down her spine, but she tried to push away the fear. Maybe we should go back. It's getting late and my family must be worried. I can continue the search tomorrow when it's brighter, she suggested timidly. The young man, however, blocked the way back. Come now, ma'am, don't tell me you're afraid now. After all, you trusted me so easily. A lady so naive, walking alone at night, carrying a valuable purse. You practically invited me to do this, he mocked, his tone changing completely. Charlotte felt her heart race, the realization of her mistake finally hitting her. Please, you don't have to do this. I can give you some money if you need it. There's no need for violence, she pleaded, her voice trembling. With a quick motion, the young man grabbed Charlotte's purse, pulling it hard. No, please don't do this. This purse was a gift from my George. I've already lost my ring. This is the only thing I have left of him, Charlotte screamed, desperately clinging to the strap. She fought with all the strength her years allowed, refusing to let go of the only object that still contained her memories, her belongings, her identity. The boy, surprised by the old woman's resistance, pulled harder. Let go, you foolish old woman. Do you think your memories are worth more than my need? The world doesn't care about your memories, only about how much they're worth, he snarled, his mask of kindness completely shattered. In the struggle, Charlotte was thrown against the alleyway wall, feeling the fabric of her dress tear even more. She cried out in pain, but did not let go of the purse. Her nails dug into the assailant's arm, making him howl in pain and surprise. You're not taking my things, Charlotte shouted, a strength she didn't know she still possessed rising from somewhere deep. These memories are all I have. They are my life, my past, my George. I'd rather die than let them go. The young man, frustrated and now injured, suddenly dropped the purse, making Charlotte stagger backwards. You crazy old lady, this isn't over, he shouted, clutching his scratched arm. However, the sound of police sirens in the distance left the assailant visibly nervous. Taking advantage of the moment of confusion, Charlotte mustered all her courage and strength. With a scream that seemed to come from her soul, she pushed the assailant with all the force she could gather. Get away from me. You don't know who you're dealing with. I may be old, but I still have the strength to fight for what's mine, she roared, her voice echoing through the alley. The young man, caught off guard, tripped and fell, hitting his head against a trash can. Charlotte didn't wait to see the result. With her heart pounding frantically, she fled out of the alley, her legs moving faster than they had in years, supported by her crutch. She emerged onto the main street, breathless and trembling. Her dress was even more torn, her hair disheveled, and she could feel a bruise forming where she had hit the wall. But she was alive, and her purse was still firmly clutched in her hands. The tears began to flow freely now, a mixture of relief, fear, and anger. Oh, George, how could I have been so foolish? You always told me to be careful of strangers. Charlotte, you would say, not every smile is sincere, not every offer of help is genuine. Why didn't I listen to you? Why did I let my guard down? She sobbed softly. As she tried to compose herself, her eyes fell on the bright storefront across the street. It was a high-end jewelry store, its lights still on despite the late hour. Charlotte looked at her reflection in the storefront, barely recognizing the disheveled, shaken woman staring back at her. Look at you, Charlotte. What would George say if he saw you like this? He always wanted you to be strong, to never give up, she murmured to herself. Across town, Eleanor's apartment was small and modest, but she strived to make it homey. The once white walls now displayed a yellowish tinge from time, and the furniture, though worn, was carefully arranged. In the next room, her son Timmy slept restlessly, his heavy breathing echoing down the narrow hallway. Eleanor moved silently through the living room, picking up scattered toys and fluffing pillows, in an attempt to maintain some order amidst the chaos of her life. Her tired eyes fell on the stack of bills on the kitchen table, a constant reminder of the struggles she faced. How did we get to this point? Timmy deserves so much more than this. I can barely put food on the table since I lost my job. We only have food until tomorrow before my money runs out, she mumbled to herself, running a hand through her disheveled hair. With a heavy sigh, Eleanor sat at the table, spreading the bills out in front of her like a grim card game. Overdue rent, utility bill with disconnection notice, medical expenses that seemed to multiply daily. Each sheet of paper was a weight on her chest, slowly suffocating her. She picked up a pen and began making desperate calculations in the margins of an envelope, searching for a mathematical solution to a problem that seemed to have no answer. If I skip dinner for a few weeks, Maybe I can pay half the rent. But what about Timmy's medicine? I can't risk his health, she thought, feeling her stomach churn with hunger and anxiety. The oppressive silence of the apartment was broken by the shrill ring of the telephone. Eleanor jumped, knocking some bills to the floor. Her heart raced. Who could be calling at this hour? With trembling hands, she answered, fearing another collection call. "Hello?" Her voice came out hesitant. On the other end of the line, a soft but firm female voice responded, "Good evening, am I speaking with Eleanor?" Confused, Eleanor confirmed, "This is Maisie, the manager at Luminous Jewelry. We have your application for the sales associate position and would like to invite you for an interview," the woman on the other end said. Eleanor felt the air rush out of her lungs. An interview? She had applied for so many jobs in the past few weeks, she barely remembered this jewelry store. "An interview? That's wonderful. When would it be?" she replied, trying to keep the emotion out of her voice. Maisie's response caught Eleanor by surprise. "Actually, we would like to conduct the interview tonight after the store closes. I know it's an unusual request, but we have a special situation and need to fill the position as soon as possible. If you pass the interview and are able to start first thing tomorrow morning, would you be available to come in at 10 p.m? Eleanor hesitated for a moment. It was late, and leaving Timmy alone worried her, but need spoke louder. Yes, I can come," she responded quickly, fearing the opportunity would slip away if she hesitated too long. "Excellent. We'll expect you at Luminous at 10 o'clock sharp." "Don't be late," said Maisie, and Eleanor could have sworn she heard a smile in her voice. With a click, the call was ended, leaving Eleanor in a whirlwind of emotions. Putting the phone back on the hook, Eleanor allowed herself a moment of pure joy. A genuine smile, the first in weeks, lit up her weary face. A chance. Finally, a real chance to get out of this desperate situation. It's a light at the end of the tunnel, she whispered to herself, barely believing it. Her eyes darted to the clock on the wall. It was 8:45 in the evening. She had just over an hour to get ready and reach the jewelry store. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, momentarily chasing away the weariness that had consumed her for so long. Eleanor rushed to the bedroom, rummaging through the closet in search of something presentable to wear. "I need to look professional, trustworthy. This could be our salvation, Timmy. Mommy's going to get this job, I promise. I won't let anything be lacking for you," she mumbled as she tossed clothes onto the bed. As she hurriedly got ready, Eleanor couldn't help but question the strangeness of the situation. An interview so late at night? At a luxury jewelry store? It seemed almost too surreal to be true. Maybe it's some kind of test. To see if I'm dedicated enough for the job, she thought, adjusting her hair in the cracked bathroom mirror. The doubt persisted in her mind, but necessity propelled her forward. She looked at her reflection, barely recognizing the determined woman staring back at her. "You can do this, Eleanor. For Timmy, you can do anything," she told herself, stealing her gaze. With one last look at her sleeping son, Eleanor grabbed her purse and headed for the door. She would ask the neighbor to keep an eye on Timmy until she returned, but her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of hope and apprehension. Just as she was about to leave, a sound made her freeze. A cough, faint at first, then stronger and more persistent, came from Timmy's room. Eleanor felt her blood run cold. She rushed back, finding her son sitting up in bed, his little face flushed and eyes watery as he struggled to breathe between fits of coughing. "Mommy!" he called out hoarsely, reaching out his little arms to her. Eleanor embraced him, feeling the heat of fever through his thin pajamas. "Shh, it's okay, darling. Mummy's here," she whispered, gently rocking him. The clock on the wall seemed to shout, reminding Eleanor of the appointment awaiting her. She looked at Timmy, then at the door, her heart torn between motherly duty and the desperate need to secure a better future for them both. Timmy's coughing subsided, but his breathing remained labored and uneven. Eleanor closed her eyes, a lone tear rolling down her cheek. "What do I do now?" she thought, despair threatening to consume her. "How can I leave him like this? But how can I miss this opportunity?" Time ticked by inexorably, and Eleanor knew she needed to make a decision. Her and Timmy's future hung by a thread, and every second that passed could mean the difference between survival and despair. Once Timmy's coughing stabilized, Eleanor asked the neighbor to stay with him until she went to the interview. The neighbor was a kind and caring woman who had been a single mother herself, just like Eleanor, and immediately agreed to help, causing the young mother's eyes to well up with restrained tears of gratitude. Minutes later, Eleanor arrived breathless in front of the luminous jewelry store, her heart pounding frantically against her chest. The luxurious storefront contrasted starkly with her simple, somewhat disheveled appearance after the frantic dash from her apartment. She nervously adjusted her hair and smoothed the wrinkles on her best blouse, which still seemed inadequate against the glimmer of the display windows. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor murmured to herself, "You can do this, Eleanor. Do it for Timmy. Show them how much you want this job." With trembling hands, she pushed open the heavy glass door and entered. The inside of the jewelry store was dazzling, with soft lights reflecting off thousands of precious stones and gleaming metals. Eleanor immediately felt out of place, as if she had stepped into a world she clearly didn't belong to. An elegant woman wearing an impeccable tailored suit and a pearl necklace approached with firm steps on the marble floor. "You must be Eleanor. I'm Maisie, the manager. Follow me," she said, her tone cold and appraising, her eyes scanning Eleanor's clothes, her lips curling in distaste at the simple attire she found with her gaze. As they walked towards the office at the back of the store, Eleanor couldn't help but notice Maisie's sidelong glances at her worn shoes. "Stay calm. Don't let appearances intimidate you. You have a lot to offer." "Your simple clothes don't define the value of your work," Eleanor thought. In the austere office, Maisie sat behind an imposing desk, gesturing for Eleanor to occupy the chair in front of her. The silence that followed was oppressive, broken only by the sound of the wall clock and Eleanor's racing heart. Finally, Maisie spoke. "So, Eleanor, tell me why you think you're qualified to work in a luxury jewelry store like Luminous." Eleanor swallowed hard, mustering all her courage. "Well, I've always had a passion for jewelry and—" Maisie cut her off with an abrupt gesture. "Passion isn't enough, dear. This is an environment that demands sophistication, elegance, and above all, the ability to relate to high-end clients." Her eyes ran over Eleanor's clothes once more, and a cold smile formed on her lips. "Frankly, looking at you, I have serious doubts you would fit in here." The words hit Eleanor like a slap, but she refused to give up. "I understand your concern, but I can assure you that I'm a quick learner and—" Again, Maisie cut her off. "Eleanor, let's be honest here. This environment simply doesn't suit you. Our clients expect to be served by someone who reflects the luxury and exclusivity of our pieces. Unfortunately, you don't convey that image." Eleanor felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she held them back. "But I really need this job. I have a sick child and—" "Personal problems are irrelevant here. This is a business, not a charity. I appreciate your interest, but I think we can end this interview right here. I don't have much time to spare, and you clearly lack the class required to work here." Maisie cut her off coldly. Eleanor felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. All her hopes, all her dreams of a better future for Timmy seemed to crumble before her eyes. "Please, just give me a chance to prove my worth," she pleaded, her voice trembling. Maisie sighed, exasperated. "Look, Eleanor, you seem like a professional, but this simply isn't the place for you. There are other stores, other opportunities that may be more suited to your humble profile." She stood up, clearly signaling that the conversation was over. Eleanor, feeling defeated and humiliated, slowly rose to her feet. "I understand. Thank you for your time." As she walked toward the exit, Eleanor couldn't help but think, how will I explain this to Timmy? How will I pay his medical bills now? How will I put food on the table tomorrow? She mumbled, struggling to maintain her composure. As she approached the front door, Eleanor heard a commotion. Muffled shouts were coming from the main area of the store. She turned, confused, and saw the security guard running towards someone. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" he yelled. Eleanor froze, her heart racing again. What was going on? She took a step toward the commotion, curiosity momentarily overriding her disappointment. That's when she saw her. An elderly lady with tattered clothes and a disheveled appearance was standing in the middle of the store, looking completely out of place and frightened. Eleanor hesitated, torn between leaving and escaping this already embarrassing situation, or staying and seeing what happened. What should I do? She thought, her instinct to help battling her desire to flee from this place that had so cruelly rejected her. Charlotte, with her soiled and ragged clothes, advanced hesitantly into the jewelry store, her wide eyes reflecting the glimmer of the displays. The burly security guard, with a hard look on his face, quickly intercepted her. "Ma'am, this is no place for you. Leave now," he growled, his voice low but threatening. Charlotte took a step back, clutching her worn purse tightly to her chest. "Please, I am. Let me explain. I was mugged, fell into a puddle," she pleaded, her voice trembling as the guard grabbed her by the arm. Maisie emerged from the back of the store, her high heels echoing on the marble floor. Her cold eyes surveyed Charlotte from head to toe, disgust evident on her expression. "What do we have here? First an unfit candidate and now this. Are we turning into a homeless shelter?" She shot a cutting look at Eleanor and Charlotte, who shrank from her cruel words, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I'm not. I just want—" Charlotte stammered, unable to form coherent sentences under Maisie's relentless gaze. Eleanor felt a wave of indignation rise within her. Maisie's words echoed in her mind, reminding her of her own humiliation moments ago. She took a step forward, her voice trembling slightly. "Excuse me, but this is no way to treat someone. She has the right to enter the store, just like any customer." Maisie turned to Eleanor, her eyes flashing with anger. Shouldn't you have left already? See, this is why people like you don't belong working here. You don't know your place, just like this beggar." The manager spat, the venom in her words causing Eleanor to recoil, but she held her ground. Emboldened by Eleanor's intervention, Charlotte tried to explain again. "Please understand, I was mugged today." Maisie cut her off with a cold laugh. "Oh, spare me the melodrama. Look at you. Do you really think you have a place in a luxury jewelry store? Our pieces cost more than you'll probably earn in your entire life, begging for coins on the streets." She gestured toward Charlotte's tattered, soiled clothes. The words hit Charlotte like physical blows. She staggered back, her back hitting a display case. The sound of the glass trembling caused the security guard to advance, grabbing Charlotte's arm forcefully. "Enough! You're leaving now. Don't come back to this store, you understand? You'll be sorry if you set foot in here again." Eleanor, unable to stand idly by, rushed to intervene. "Let her go. She hasn't done anything wrong." Maisie watched the scene with a mix of disdain and irritation. "You two out of my store now, or I'll call the police." Charlotte was openly sobbing now, tears tracing lines down her weathered face. "Please, I only wanted—" "Have some compassion. Is this how you were taught to treat customers?" Her words were almost inaudible, drowned out by pain and humiliation. Eleanor put a comforting arm around Charlotte's shoulders, shooting Maisie a defiant look. "How can you be so cruel? She could be your mother, your grandmother." Maisie scoffed, adjusting her expensive blazer with a sharp motion. "Family. Look at you two. One looks like she was dragged by a garbage truck and the other— well, let's say the clearance section of a department store would be a considerable upgrade for your wardrobe." She eyed Eleanor with disdain. The words cut deep, causing Eleanor and Charlotte to shrink back. The air in the store felt heavy, laden with tension and cruelty. Charlotte, still trembling, took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears streaming down her wrinkled face. Something inside her sparked, a long-forgotten flame of indignation and dignity. She straightened herself, her eyes now shining with renewed determination. "No, this is unacceptable. I demand to speak with the owner of this jewelry chain," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. Eleanor, surprised by Charlotte's sudden change, gently squeezed her shoulder in support. Maisie, on the other hand, let out a scornful laugh. "The owner? Oh dear, you really think someone that important would care about— well, someone like you? That's a good one. The owner of this jewelry chain is a billionaire. She doesn't care about people like you." Charlotte didn't let herself be intimidated. Her chin lifted defiantly. "Yes, the owner, because I'm sure she wouldn't approve of the way her employees treat potential customers. Or is it this store's policy to judge people by their appearance? That doesn't seem like a good business model to me." She took a step forward, her gaze fixed on Maisie. Eleanor watched, admiring Charlotte's transformation. "She's right. What you're doing here is pure, simple discrimination," Eleanor chimed in, her own confidence growing. Maisie seemed momentarily flustered, her veneer of superiority cracking slightly. She looked to the security guard, who seemed equally uncomfortable with the situation. "This is ridiculous. You two need to leave now before I call the police," Maisie finally said, her voice betraying a slight tremor. Charlotte, however, remained unshaken. "We're not leaving until you call the owner. If you have nothing to hide, what's the problem with making a simple call? Or does the owner not care about people like you either? I don't think you're able to get her number." The challenge in her voice was evident, and Eleanor realized she was witnessing something extraordinary. How can she be so brave after all this? Eleanor thought, feeling a surge of admiration for the elderly woman. Maisie looked at the elder with an ego soaring high, judging herself superior. "Look, I don't even have the owner's number. She doesn't get involved with trivial matters like this." Charlotte folded her arms, her stance firm, contrasting with her disheveled appearance. "Then call the headquarters. I'm sure they can provide the contact. Or would they not give it to you?" Eleanor nodded in agreement, adding, "Or maybe we could look it up online. Big chains usually have contact information available." Maisie shot Eleanor a furious look. The tension in the air was palpable. The other store employees were watching the scene unfold with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. Eleanor, realizing her chance at employment was already completely ruined, decided to fully embrace the situation. "You know what? I don't want to work at a place that treats people like this. What you're doing is wrong and you know it." Her words seemed to hit some of the employees, who exchanged guilty looks. Maisie, seeing herself losing credibility, finally relented. "Fine, you want me to call? You'll see she only cares about high-class people like me. I'll call the owner of the chain, but don't say I didn't warn you." With jerky movements, Maisie picked up the phone and dialed a number. The ensuing silence was tense, broken only by the sound of Maisie's fingers drumming impatiently on the desk. After what seemed like an eternity, she began speaking, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Hello, this is Maisie from the Central Branch. We have a situation here and a customer is insisting on speaking with the proprietor, the owner of all the store chains. Yes, I understand she's a busy woman, but..." There was a long pause, during which Maisie grew increasingly pale. "I understand. Yes, I'll call this number, thank you." She hung up the phone and with a triumphant look dialed the number of the luxury jewelry chain's owner. Before Maisie could say anything, an unexpected sound cut through the air. A cell phone ring coming from Charlotte's mud-stained purse. All eyes turned to the elderly woman, shocked. With trembling hands, she pulled out an old cell phone from her purse. The name on the screen made her eyes twinkle. The name on the screen was Luminous Jewelry, Branch 2. Charlotte looked at Maisie, then at Eleanor, and finally at the phone in her hand. The silence in the store was deafening, broken only by the insistent ringing of the cell phone. The atmosphere was charged with expectation and confusion. What did this call mean? Who was Charlotte, really? The answers to these questions hung in the air, ready to be revealed with a simple, "Hello." Charlotte answered the phone with a surprising calm, contrasting sharply with the evident shock on the faces around her. "Hello, Maisie. My name is Charlotte Clifford. I am the founding partner of this store, and of the entire luxury jewelry chain in the city," she said, before hanging up the phone with a deep sigh, staring at the dumbfounded, gaping crowd. The silence was palpable, broken only by the distant sound of traffic outside. Maisie, mouth agape, was the first to stammer, You're the owner." Charlotte nodded slowly, her tired but determined eyes. "Yes, I am Charlotte Luminous, founder and owner of this jewelry chain. You didn't let me explain who I was. You didn't care about anything but my clothes." The revelation dropped like a bomb in the store. The employees exchanged incredulous looks as Eleanor tried to process the surprising twist. Charlotte, however, wasted no time with the commotion. She straightened up, her posture now emanating an authority that was previously hidden beneath the soiled clothes and disheveled appearance. "I think we all need to have a serious conversation about judgment and prejudice. What happened here today is a perfect example of what is wrong with our society," she began, her firm voice echoing through the silent store. Charlotte began to walk slowly around the store, her eyes scanning every face present. "You see, today I experienced something that many people face daily. I was judged, humiliated, and nearly kicked out of my own store simply because of my appearance. Did you wonder why I looked like this? Did anyone care to ask if I needed help? She paused, looking directly at Maisie, who now seemed to want to disappear. Charlotte shook her head, a sad expression on her face. No. Instead, I was treated as a nuisance, as someone who didn't deserve to be here. With a deep sigh, Charlotte continued her narrative. Today I went for a walk in the park, something I do often to remember where I came from and the journey I've taken. I helped a lost child find their parents, and in the process I fell into a muddy puddle. Afterward I was mugged. But you know what hurt me the most? It wasn't the fall, nor the mugging. It was the treatment I received here, in a place I built on the foundation of respect and dignity. Charlotte turned to face the entire staff. This company was not built on prejudice or elitism. George, my late husband, and I started from scratch. We knew what it was like to struggle, to be judged by appearance or bank account. Her eyes glistened with restrained emotion. We founded this chain with the vision that jewelry is not just for the wealthy, but for anyone who appreciates beauty and meaning. Every piece tells a story, just like every person who walks through that door. And it is our duty to listen to those stories, not judge them. She pointed toward the store's entrance. Charlotte then turned to Maisie, her gaze firm, but not without compassion. As for you, Maisie, I hope today has been a valuable lesson. There is no place for prejudice or discrimination in our company. However, I believe in second chances. She paused, letting the tension build. You will be transferred to our branch in a less privileged area of the city. There, I hope you will learn the true value of customer service and empathy. Maisie, pale and visibly shaken, simply nodded silently. Charlotte, still in her soiled and torn clothes but now emanating an aura of unquestionable authority, turned to Eleanor. Please, accompany me to my office, she said, her voice soft but firm. Eleanor, still dazed by the recent events, followed Charlotte down the jewelry store's luxurious corridors, feeling completely out of place. As they entered the office, Charlotte closed the door and motioned for Eleanor to take a comfortable seat. The contrast between Charlotte's disheveled appearance and the elegance of the office was surreal. Eleanor couldn't help but think, how does this extraordinary woman manage to maintain such dignity after everything she's been through? Charlotte sat behind the imposing desk, her eyes fixed on Eleanor. First and foremost, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you did today. Your courage and compassion reminded me why I started this business in the first place, she began, her voice laden with emotion. Eleanor felt a lump in her throat, surprised by the intensity of Charlotte's gratitude. You looked beyond appearances, Eleanor. In a world where quick judgment is the norm, you chose empathy. That is rare and precious. Charlotte stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city beyond. You know, when George and I started this company, we faced many obstacles. People underestimated us, judged us for our humble beginnings. She turned to Eleanor, a sad smile on her face. But it was precisely that experience that taught us the importance of treating every person with dignity, regardless of their appearance or financial situation. Eleanor listened intently, feeling a profound connection with Charlotte's words. She thought of her own sick son, their daily struggles, and felt tears forming in her eyes. Charlotte returned to her desk and picked up a folder. Now, Eleanor, tell me about yourself. What brought you here today? Eleanor took a deep breath, gathering courage. Well, Mrs. Charlotte, Charlotte gently interrupted her. Please, call me Charlotte. Eleanor nodded, grateful for the informality that eased her tension slightly. Charlotte, I came here today because I desperately need a job. I have a son, Timmy. He's sick, and the medical costs. I lost my job recently as a store clerk. I have experience in the segment, but I'm often judged for my clothes when I go to interviews. They judge me every time for not being up to the standards of a luxury store despite my experience. I just want to support my son, to be able to afford his treatment and give us dignity. Her voice faltered, and she struggled to hold back tears. Charlotte listened attentively as Eleanor recounted her situation, the mounting medical bills, the constant fear of not being able to provide for her son, the sleepless nights worrying about the future. With each word, Charlotte's face softened even more, her empathy evident. When Eleanor finished, Charlotte remained silent for a moment, processing everything she had heard. Then, with a warm smile, she said, "Eleanor, your story touches me deeply. I see in you the same determination and strength that I saw in myself so many years ago." Rising, Charlotte circled the table and sat down in the chair next to Eleanor. "I want you to know that your interview began the moment you walked through that door. Your compassion, your integrity, your courage, those are the values we seek here at Luminous Jewelers." Eleanor felt her heart race, scarcely daring to believe what she was hearing. Charlotte continued, "It is with great pleasure that I offer you the position of manager at this branch. I believe you will bring exactly the kind of leadership and empathy we need," Charlotte offered, with a gentle, grateful smile. Eleanor was speechless, tears of relief and gratitude streaming down her face. I don't know what to say," she stammered. Charlotte smiled, gently squeezing Eleanor's hand. "Say yes, and know that, in addition to the generous salary, we offer excellent health insurance that will cover all of Timmy's needs." Eleanor couldn't hold back a sob of joy. Yes, 1,000 times yes, thank you, Charlotte. You don't know what this means to me and Timmy." Charlotte stood, pulling Eleanor into a warm embrace, not caring about her own soiled clothes. "Welcome to the Luminous family, Eleanor. I'm sure you'll shine here as brightly as the jewels we sell." As they parted from the hug, Eleanor noticed something shining on the floor. It was a wedding band. She bent down to pick it up, and upon closer examination saw an inscription, "To Charlotte, my eternal love, George." With trembling hands, she handed the ring to Charlotte, whose eyes filled with tears as she recognized the lost jewel. "Oh, George, you always find a way to remind me of what truly matters," Charlotte whispered, sliding the ring back onto her finger. She looked at Eleanor with a radiant smile. "You see, Eleanor, sometimes we just lose things to find them again at the right time with the right people. I think today was a day of reunions for us both." The two women shared a look of mutual understanding, knowing this was the beginning not just of a professional relationship, but a true and lasting friendship. Charlotte and Eleanor exited the office. The shop owner, still in her soiled clothes but emanating an aura of nobility, addressed the staff. "Today was a day of great lessons and changes. From now on, Eleanor will be the new manager of this branch. I expect all of you to treat her with the same respect and dignity you should show every customer who walks through our doors," she announced, her voice firm yet warm. Eleanor, by her side, smiled shyly, still scarcely believing her luck. In the days that followed, word of Charlotte and Eleanor's extraordinary story quickly spread. The local press picked up the tale, turning it into an inspiring account of compassion and second chances. Luminous Jewelers saw a significant uptick in customers, many coming not just for the jewels, but for the experience of being treated with genuine consideration and respect. Under Eleanor's leadership, the branch flourished. She implemented new customer service policies, emphasizing empathy and understanding. The employees, initially skeptical, soon embraced the new approach, finding that treating each customer as a unique individual not only improved sales, but also made their work more rewarding. As for Timmy, Eleanor's son, he received the necessary medical treatment thanks to the new health plan. His health gradually improved, and Eleanor could finally breathe easier, knowing her child was getting the proper care. Months later, the afternoon sun bathed the renovated facade of Luminous Jewelers. The display windows gleamed, showcasing not just stunning jewels, but also small plaques with inspiring stories from customers. A new addition to the decor caught the eye. A framed photograph of Charlotte and Eleanor, smiling side by side, with the inscription, "Every jewel has a story, every person has worth." Eleanor, now dressed in an elegant yet understated suit, circulated among customers and staff, her warm smile lighting up the space. She paused to assist a nervous young man selecting his first engagement ring. Across the store, Maisie, who had returned from her temporary transfer, watched the scene with newfound admiration. Her experience in a less privileged neighborhood had transformed her perspective. Now she approached Eleanor and the customer, offering her own suggestions with a kindness that would have been unthinkable months ago. The shop door opened, and Charlotte entered, elegantly attired but with the same humble glow in her eyes. She smiled at the transformation in her store. Staff and customers interacted with genuine cordiality, the sound of laughter and animated conversation filling the air. Eleanor, spotting Charlotte, excused herself from her customer and went to greet her. "Charlotte, what a wonderful surprise," she said, embracing the woman who had changed her life. Charlotte returned the warm hug. "I came to see how things are going, but from what I see, I needn't worry. This place? It's exactly as George and I always dreamed it would be," Charlotte said, looking around with evident satisfaction. Eleanor nodded, emotion welling up inside her. "All thanks to you, Charlotte. Your belief in me, your lesson in humility and compassion. It changed everything," she responded. Charlotte shook her head. "No, Eleanor. It was thanks to you. You reminded me of this place's true purpose when I needed it most." She paused, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "How is Timmy?" Eleanor's face lit up at the mention of her son. "He's great. The new treatment is working wonders. In fact, he wants to meet you. Said he wants to thank the fairy godmother who saved him and his mom in person." She hesitated, a shy smile forming on her lips. Charlotte laughed, a sound filled with genuine joy. "Well, who am I to refuse such a charming invitation? How about dinner at my place this weekend? You, Timmy, and maybe—" She looked around the shop. "The whole crew." The idea quickly spread among the employees, who responded with enthusiasm. Maisie, overhearing the conversation, approached hesitantly. I'm invited too," she asked, her voice betraying a mixture of hope and apprehension. Charlotte looked at her kindly. "Of course, Maisie. This is a family business, no matter the past mistakes." That night, after the store closed, the crew gathered for an impromptu toast. Eleanor raised her glass, looking at the smiling faces around her. "To Luminous Jewelers, where every person shines brighter than any diamond," she said. "To Luminous Jewelers," everyone echoed, their voices blending into a harmony of hope and gratitude. Later, when Eleanor finally arrived home, she found Timmy waiting for her, his eyes sparkling and full of life. She hugged him tightly, feeling a wave of gratitude for everything that had happened. "How was your day, Mum?" Timmy asked, his voice animated and curious. Eleanor smiled, stroking her son's hair. "It was magical, dear. You know, sometimes life surprises us in the most wonderful way." She looked out the window, seeing the stars twinkling in the night sky. Each one seemed to tell a story of hope and possibilities. Eleanor thought of Charlotte, her own journey and the bright future that now lay ahead of them. "Timmy, how about I tell you a story?" A story about a jewelry store, a very special lady, and how sometimes when we think all is lost, life gifts us with something even more precious than any jewel, she said softly. Timmy's eyes grew wide with excitement. "Yes, please, Mom. Tell me everything." And so, sitting together in the cozy living room of their apartment, Eleanor began to recount the extraordinary events that had transformed their lives. Her voice was filled with emotion and gratitude as she shared with her son the most valuable lesson she had learned, that a person's true worth lies not in their clothes or appearance, but in the kindness of their heart and the strength of their character. As the story unfolded, Eleanor and Timmy felt a profound sense of peace and hope. The future, once so uncertain and frightening, now shone with promises of better days. And it was all thanks to an unexpected encounter, an act of compassion, and the wisdom of looking beyond appearances to see the true value in every individual. That night, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe was smiling upon the little family, silently celebrating the transformative power of kindness and understanding. And somewhere, perhaps not too far away, Charlotte too was gazing at the same starry sky, her heart filled with gratitude for having found not only her lost ring, but also a new friend and a reminder of the true purpose of her life and business. Luminous Jewelers had become more than just a store. It was now a symbol of hope, a place where extraordinary stories unfolded every day, proving that sometimes the most precious jewels are the bonds we forge with one another. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing exciting stories almost every day. Don't miss the next surprising narrative that is about to appear on your screen. We are immensely grateful to have you here with us. Now you can click on the links appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, filled with valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.